Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of MJ Flood Technology and Microsoft, I would like to welcome you to this morning's webinar themed The Future of Telephony is Now. This morning, I am joined by Eoin Mulligan, who is the Teams voice specialist for Microsoft Ireland, and our own Garrett Wallis, who will take us through the features and functionality around Teams voice and the wider platform this morning. The highlight of the event this morning is I'm joined by Danny O'Toole, who is the head of digital transformation for Mayo County Council, and speak to them in terms of their journey with Teams voice now that they're fully deployed. So what are the things that are top of mind for a CIO in the public sector? Well, I would suppose a lot of the themes are very similar to that of the commercial environment. And I suppose the one distinction would be, given COVID-19 and indeed Brexit coming down the tracks, that perhaps public sector may have to do more with less, with restricted budgets and those sorts of things. The really good news is that in order to deploy Teams, you may well find that the licensing is in place within public sector to be able to adopt the technology and to roll it out and to harness the benefits that are inherent within the Teams platform. So I will be back to speak to you later on when I'm joined by Danny, and we're sticking very tightly to 45 minutes this morning. We do appreciate you taking the time, and I will now hand over to Eoin Mulligan from Microsoft for his slot, and I'll speak to you in a little while. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Eoin Mulligan. I'm the Teams technical specialist with Microsoft here in Ireland. Delighted to be able to present here at the webinar. I wanted to prepare and put together this presentation to you just to show you some of the capabilities that we have, particularly in the voice and telephony space within Microsoft Teams. So when we think about Teams, we obviously look at Teams as that hub for teamwork. We've got all of the chat, we've got all of the meetings, we've got the integration with Office 365 from a files point of view. It's all backed up with the enterprise security and compliance capabilities that we've built into it. But the really key part that I'm here to talk to about today is the calling capability. So today, you all have the calling app within Teams, which allows you to make peer-to-peer calls, audio or video, and connect with people within the organization. You can also use it then to connect to people outside the organization using the federated calling capabilities. So already we've extended and we've given you an extensible calling platform. Really though, what we want to talk about here is how do we extend that out to be able to make and receive calls from the telephony network. So when we think about Teams calling, we look at everybody having Microsoft 365 or Office 365 with a Teams client. And then we have the phone system capabilities within M or O 365. On top of this, we've built out and we supply the phone system management capabilities and the extensibility that we've built into Teams from a programmable framework where you can deploy in bots and other applications. The challenge within Teams, or what many organizations want to know, is how do we deliver dial tone into Teams? How can my users make and receive calls? So there are two different options. Microsoft are a registered telco. We have calling plans available in a number of countries worldwide, including Ireland, where you can port your numbers to Microsoft and have a complete cloud-based solution. Although what we find though with many organizations and many enterprises is they already have existing agreements with telco providers. They have their mobile phones and their telephone lines all tied in a contract, and it's about how do we connect into that. And that connectivity is done via direct routing capabilities. So what does phone system allow you to do? It really is about and as simple as replacing your traditional telephone system with Office 365. It's about bringing that all of those voice capabilities into Office 365, replacing all of that traditional telephony infrastructure that you have on premise today, and all of the hardware that's there. It's also about consolidating all of that into Office 365. So you've got one place to manage all of this. So when you create a new user, when you onboard a new user into the organization, you can give them now not only email and Teams, but you can also give them a telephone number and the ability to make and receive calls. And then you can also scale that out globally so that as you replace telephone systems in different regions, that's all very possible. And you can just do that and connect in with using direct routing there. Or it might be that you have a region where you've got a small number of users where it actually makes more sense to use calling plans for those users and direct routing in your major offices. The interop and the migration from one to the other is what many organizations want to understand, and how can they do it. So when we look at our Teams users over here on the left-hand side, we give them Microsoft Teams and we give them the phone system capability. They obviously have connectivity to the internet to be able to use Teams, but that's obviously used as the carrier to connect them into the session border controller, the SBC, which is either in Azure, it's in your data center, it might be in your office, depending on the type of SBC that you deploy. And that SBC then is connected to the carrier and the telco, allowing those users in Teams to make and also receive external calls. So that's the simple part. So if we look at our Teams user, Teams phone system, the internet, connected to the SBC, out to the carrier or telco that you have in the office, or it could be a SIP trunk provider, and then connecting to external callers. But from a migration point of view and an integration point of view, we've got lots of customers with the existing PBX infrastructure sitting in their premises. You might have a contact center that you've invested a lot of money in and that you need to get a return on investment before doing anything with that. So we can also connect that SBC into your on-premise PBX, your existing PBX infrastructure, telephony infrastructure, and that way then those PBX users can still be able to make and receive calls. But we can also put a lot of clever things into that SBC for users on Teams to be able to call the PBX users and vice versa, so that nobody is left as an island where they can't call each other. We've lots of partners in the certified SBC space. Audio Codes, Ribbon, Oracle, and Nokia are just some of them. But we've just announced in the last month or so that we've certified Avaya SBCs and Cisco SBCs. So if you've got those existing SBCs in your environment today, it might be just something as simple as a firmware upgrade and working with a partner to manage the deployment of it into direct routing and with Teams telephony. We have a full-featured call queue and auto attendant capability built into Teams as well. So as we move the capability from the PBX on-premise to Teams, we can then stand up call queues and auto attendants. So when somebody dials into the organization, we can have the press 1 for sales, press 2 for accounts, etc. Or we can route it directly to a call queue of operators who can answer the phones, and we can distribute calls around the organization. So all very simple from that point of view. And by the way, there's no additional license required for call queues and auto attendants. It is included as part of the phone system capability. We're working on the Calls app within Teams today, and we'll have a new release of this coming out in this quarter. And we really are just enhancing the capabilities of it. So from the call app today, you may not have the numbers here because you can't make external calls. But when you can, you will have all of these capabilities that are here. But we're also putting in other things like being able to control your devices and your call forwarding settings very quickly and very easily from here. You're going to be able to see all of the parked calls that are already held in the organization, and you can retrieve parked calls from there. You can access all your contacts, and this is where we'll integrate with Outlook for your contacts, and we'll do a sync with Outlook. We can have speed dials and delegations over on the right-hand side. We'll have our voicemail integrated with the ability to play it back directly from screen. And we'll also be introducing sidecar support as well, where if you've got a traditional operator type handset and you want sidecars attached to that, you'll be able to plug those in and sign speed dials or status information from them. We also have a whole range of certified devices for users. And I'm just going to concentrate on the personal devices space here. So we've got a range of headsets and devices like the Elara, where users can utilize different types of devices to interact with Teams voice. We've got speaker devices, which is where they can put those devices on their desk. And this is really about users who are on calls a lot of the day, and it gives them just a hands-free device to use. And then we have a range of traditional handset type devices, which are all running a Teams version of software. And those devices are able to obviously make and receive calls, but obviously then also able to do Teams functions like join a Teams meeting. They will also be able to have capabilities like closed captioning for those meetings, etc. So very powerful devices. One of the other areas that lots of organizations want to understand is what is the call quality like? What's the user experience like in the making and receiving calls, and also in the overall meetings capability as well. So every organization has the ability today, and you don't need phone system for this, to access what's called the call quality dashboard and see what your user's experience is like in terms of calls, the peer-to-peer audio calls, external calls, and also their meetings. And you can see what we would classify as poor quality, good quality, etc. And this gives you an overall view of how the system is performing, how your networks are performing within your building, and also it can flag up different challenges that users might be having with voice or quality across teams. We can also, though, dig into individual users and see exactly what's happening from their point of view. So when a user reports a problem with a poor quality call, we can actually go into that user in the Teams Admin Center, go into the call quality information for that. We can see the 7-day history, and we can dig down into a call and go to the level where we can see what device they used, what system they were running, and the connectivity that they had, whether it was Wi-Fi or whether they were on 4G, for example, or internet. We can see whether the audio quality was rated as good or poor, etc. And we can see potentially here what it was that actually caused the poor quality or the poor experience. So it could have been the network, it could have been the device that they were using, or it could have been the third party externally to them as well. One of the other areas that has been a real growth area for Teams in the last while has been the embedding of other applications within Teams. So we've got a whole range of Teams applications in the App Store, 300 plus at this stage. But what we've also focused on is certifying a range of apps in the contact center and call recording compliance area to extend out the capabilities of Teams as a platform. So we can now support the migration of those completely away from those on-premise PBX with contact center solutions into Office 365 and Microsoft Teams, or for organizations who need to deploy a contact center in a more formal basis for the interaction with their customers. They're able to use that with these certified solutions from partners like NICE, Anywhere 365, 59, or from a recording point of view, they can deploy a recording where they may want to record all of the inbound calls to a particular group of people or to the organization to make sure that everything is said and dealt with in a compliant way. So that's a brief overview of what we're doing from a Teams voice point of view and a telephony point of view. Thank you very much for your time and for listening. Goodbye.
Thanks, Owen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Garrett Wallis, and I'm the Microsoft Practice Lead here in MJ Flood Technology. Owen has given us a great summary of the capability of Microsoft Teams Voice and its ability to deliver a high quality, high functionality telephony service within an organisation. For the next few minutes, I'd like to focus on a few of the points made and to put some context around those. The points are the scale and maturity of Microsoft Teams Voice, the ability to integrate Teams Voice with existing telephony services, and the ability to extend the service to meet more sophisticated requirements. And finally, then, the importance of a strong partner to assist in the adoption of such services. So one moment while I just share some of my slides with you now to keep me on point. So we've termed today Microsoft Teams and the future of telephony is now. And so the question comes to mind, why does Microsoft Teams represent the future of telephony and why now? Microsoft Teams Voice is Microsoft's cloud-based PBX offering. Cloud-based services place additional burden on connectivity and require an organisation to place trust in external services. And some organisations have historically been reluctant to accept the perceived risk of locating such a service as telephony outside of their organisation, and placing that trust in another organisation. Well, if nothing else, recent events have shown that that cloud and networking services can be depended upon, and that the agility delivered by cloud-based services offer tangible benefits to organisations. Recently, organisations have had no choice but to depend on cloud and networking services, and it has delivered through unprecedented demand. New work practices are being forced upon organisations to assess how best to deliver services like voice and the part that cloud plays in those, in the delivery of those services. You know, a point is voice services are not new to Microsoft, who have been developing voice services for many years through Link and the evolution through Skype and Skype for Business and now into Teams Voice, and making Microsoft now one of the largest voice providers on the market. Microsoft Teams Voice is Microsoft's implementation of cloud-based PBX effectively, and it's delivered within the Microsoft Teams client interface to a user. The diagram I'm showing here now shows, just illustrates the extent of the Microsoft network. And it illustrates that high speed, low latency access to these PBX services located within Microsoft data centers can be delivered at low latency, which is critical for voice services, and is available to the vast majority of users regardless of location. I'm showing the global map, but you know what's more relevant to us is perhaps the local environment in Ireland. And in the context of Ireland alone, there are 3 Microsoft data centers delivering a level of resilience that would be difficult for any organisation to achieve themselves. It's a mature service, and industry analysts have been assessing the voice and unified communications marketplace, and there's 2 particular measures. One is the capability of the solution that's offered, and the other is the ability of the organisation as a provider of that service. And in both instances, Microsoft appear in the magic quadrant, in the leaders quadrant, both in a completeness of vision and the ability to execute, and in their capability as a service provider for an enterprise class service. What cloud telephony brings to us. So why is this the future? Well, you know, IP telephony isn't new, but nor is cloud-based IP telephony. But what Teams Voice does is it makes those services available to everyone, any user in the small organisation or large organisation, in any location or on any device. You know, it effectively, we call it making what was traditionally a fixed service, making that mobile. Teams delivers on those services through the Teams app, providing a seamless integration between communications and collaboration. There's new methods of collaboration between interpersonal communication and between us and our customers, and social media, etc. Our communication platform must be able to integrate with all of those. It's a cloud-based service, and a statement of fact in relation to cloud-based services that it removes the cost and complexity of significant on-premises infrastructure, the investment required for that, and the ongoing maintenance and service of that infrastructure. And rigid, fixed on-premises infrastructure is often a barrier to change and agility, which is so important in today's climate. And Microsoft can deliver a complete telephony solution. For many organizations, the native capabilities of Teams Voice would be more than sufficient. For customers for whom their requirement for external calling is met by a calling plan, they don't even need to deal with a telco, and the calling plan model can make financial sense for some organizations. For others, the telcos can offer additional benefits and integrated services and also cost savings, and in those instances they just need to deal with Microsoft and the telco, and the lines of demarcation are very clear, and the service management and vendor management is relatively straightforward. The second point I wanted to talk to was the native capability of Teams, and then it's the ability to extend through integration. Now, let me make one point clear, though, is that when we talk about extensibility and the need for extensibility, it doesn't mean that Teams is deficient in function in any way. The native capabilities of Teams will meet most requirements, and some organizations or parts of those organizations have more sophisticated requirements over and above the native capabilities. In the same way, above the native capabilities of Teams are of any other PBXs, for that matter. There's now a wide ecosystem of service providers who now support Teams Voice for integration with their platforms, and they're well-known and established providers and also new and innovative providers. I will note at this point that the native capabilities of Teams that are advancing so fast that our conversations with the customers now are having to get into significant detail to confirm the need for third-party integrations. That being said, there is a need, particularly in customer service centres and in regulated industries around contact centres and call recording and call management capabilities. Key to those integrations is the session border controller, as Owen touched on earlier. The SBC is a special purpose device that routes IP communications flows between platforms. It serves, it's important in three aspects. It's the route, as Owen pointed out, for us to provide telco integration. The incoming service from the telco connects to the SBC, and Teams connects to the SBC, or the legacy PBX connects there, and the SBC routes the traffic. It's aware of where a user or a user extension is, whether it's on the Teams environment or on a legacy PBX environment, etc. That aids in transition, enabling smooth integration and transition between current PBX and Teams. It can be a long process for a large organization to transition entirely, just in terms of change management. So to be able to deliver that integration seamlessly is a key element to the process, and the SBC enables that. Then it also delivers on this third-party extensibility requirement for customers with more sophisticated requirements that aren't met natively within the phone system platform. And most commonly here, we're talking about contact center integration, where the contact center client interface is used with all of the functions and features of that, but it is still using the underlying Teams platform. Or for quality management or regulatory management environments, and in effect there I'm referring to call recording and discovery and records management, etc. Again, that capability is delivered on top of Teams, but it is integrated through the SBC. My third and final point is just the importance of an informed and structured approach to delivery of a Microsoft Teams-based service within a phone service within an organization. MJ Flood Technology are the leading Microsoft partner in Ireland for Teams Voice. We bring the right people who bridge that gap between telephony and IT, and in particular with cloud services. Having been the first partner in Ireland to establish a Microsoft Cloud Voice practice, we've gained the experience that allows us to develop processes based on successful delivery. We've learned from each customer engagement in terms of the requirements of customers and how to address the challenges of telephony within organizations through Teams and through the cloud. We bring proofs of that experience through reference architectures and customer testimonials. We've worked with a number of significant organizations over time, from large to small, delivering across the spectrum of of fully native Microsoft Teams environments to very complex integrations over an extended period. There's a number that come to mind that I would just mention that illustrate that. Technical University Dublin, TU Dublin, who were formed on the amalgamation of 3 institutes of technology across Dublin with DIT, Blanchardstown IT and Tallow IT, and they were faced with creating a new and integrated telephony platform for those 3 distinct organisations, which were distributed across multiple locations for over 3,200 faculty members. And not only that, but they had to contend with remote working right in the middle of deployment as when lockdown came into play. Similarly affected by that were Fingal County Council, again in the middle of a migration, around about 1,200 users, having to stand up a dedicated call centre within a matter of hours, measured in hours, about 48 hours they had a call centre in place. Again, just building upon the Teams platform that they had put in and the integrations that they had in place with their legacy environments, etc. Mayo County Council, who are now entirely Teams voice across multiple locations. Some of those locations are quite rural, but they're able to deliver exactly the same feature set and functionality for all users across the organisation, whether they're in a small remote location or within head office. There's no distinction made between users or barriers like that. So that represents just a small subset of some of the customers that we've dealt with. We have a large reference base to call upon. I'm going to, at this point, hand back to James, who's going to speak with one of our customers. So, James, at this point, I'll hand back over to you.
So we move on now to the highlight of this morning's webinar, which is our customer interaction. And I would like to welcome Danny O'Toole from Mayo County Council. He is Head of Digital Transformation, and we're going to go through and run through a series of questions with him this morning. So Danny, I'd like to welcome you this morning and thank you for giving us your valuable time.
Good morning. Good to meet you and happy to be here.
Yeah, excellent. So Danny, just moving along, you might just give us a sense of, the organisation, in terms of geographies and, users, and what kind of are the imperatives from your perspective?
Okay, Mayo, as many people know, is a rural county, geographically dispersed, population of 130,000 people. Within Mayo County Council, we have a staff population of just under 1,300 people. We have a constant requirement to maintain high standards of service delivery across the county to the citizens and the communities that we serve.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for that. So, Danny, obviously, in terms of, you would have gone through, an evaluation and those sorts of things. What would have led to Teams being your choice of platform?
I guess, I suppose if I take it back a step, our journey to this point began really in 2016, late 2016, when we took the decision to go to Office 365. And at the time, it was Skype for Business. Obviously, it came before Microsoft Teams. We looked at the technologies that was out there. We looked at what was best fitting our organizational needs, and we looked at the whole business IT alignment. We put together a reasonably strong business case, and we put it to our senior management team at the time. Our infrastructure prior to that was quite ad hoc and thrown together, if you like, particularly in the telephony side. We had a number of ad hoc systems. There were 7 in total, I think, around the county in our regional offices. And we took the decision maybe to consolidate all of them because there was a high cost overhead on those at the time, and they were end of life in some cases. And we put the business case together, as I said, to the management team at the time. And to be fair, it was well received, and the benefits were sawn from an early stage. And we're fortunate, I guess, that we have buy-in to the likes of this journey that we began from the top down. We've had that buy-in continuously ever since, and I suppose that has stood us well in being well regarded as an innovative and forward-thinking local authority.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you've touched on some really interesting points there in terms of the consolidation and, you know, reduction of cost. And you spoke about it, you know, we would tend to agree it's a journey. And where would you see that you are within that journey now, Jenny?
We have a strong level of maturity. Obviously, our journey, as I said, started in 2016. We've moved to the Microsoft stack, obviously, digital first, cloud first approach to everything we do since that journey began. And we've a strong level of maturity in the various stacks, the various aspects of the Microsoft stack, both in SharePoint, Dynamics, obviously in Teams. We're very much along the way, and due to the current climate as well, that maturity escalated quickly in the early stages of this year. But yeah, we're well established. I cannot say we're there yet, but we're well along the road. The levels of maturity in each of the areas are very strong, and we're building all the time and moving with the technology as it moves.
So one of the interesting, aspects that everybody kind of wants to know, and I think is difficult to measure, is total cost of ownership, or indeed return on investment. Would you be in a position to give us, and we're certainly not talking about monetary amounts, but even percentages, and even to talk to maybe a little bit of productivity and those sorts of tenets?
A difficult one to, and probably a bit early for us yet to project how far along that road we are in terms of return on the investment, but it's evident to see, outside of the monetary side of it, it's evident to see that productivity has definitely gone up in the use of the technology and the use of particularly the collaborative technologies like Teams. Previously it was Microsoft of Skype for Business, and now obviously Teams has taken over from that, and we have our entire staff population on Microsoft Teams now at the moment, and most definitely productivity has gone up because of that centralized collaboration and the ability to, simple things like work on documents together, co-editing, stuff like that. It's been such a giant leap for some departments in terms of consolidating their information into one space and getting the benefit from the technology, both from a collaboration and editing perspective.
Yeah. And tell me, look, highly topical, and it's hard to get away from calls without mentioning COVID these days. But has COVID affected how you run, and how maybe has Teams been assistive then in terms of how you've approached that?
It most definitely has. COVID obviously has dramatically affected everything we do, and we're now we have entered now a new normal, but technology for us, and particularly Microsoft Teams, has enabled us, I suppose, initially to go into a remote working capacity, because that was obviously, remote working is something we as a local authority would have never considered. That was something the Microsofts of this world did, and the tech companies around Ireland and the world. So we quickly revved up the engines in the first 2 or 3 weeks of COVID lockdown, escalated a Microsoft Teams rollout that was planned for 6 months into 3 weeks, as many companies will attest to. And that has been a fundamental part of the benefit of remote working and getting people to the same levels of productivity, and even higher than they were previously used to in the office environment. One of the big things that happened on the back of the first week of lockdown was the introduction of obviously we as a local authority have a responsibility to the people that are most vulnerable in our communities and the citizens out there that we serve. We had to set up a COVID response team. In addition to that, we set up a COVID hotline that was built exclusively on Microsoft Teams, and that was spun up over a weekend very quickly, very efficiently, and very well received by the management team.
Yeah, so I suppose agility then being a key tenet then of what you were able to do in that response. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It was pivotal in the response to the pandemic. Obviously, we had a duty of care, as I said, to the people that we serve and the communities we serve, and there was a lot of uncertainty out there for everybody, both us and the communities. But I think when people got reassured that there was someone there to ask a question of or get information from, or how do I get my groceries, or how do I get my prescription, particularly those, like we are, as I said earlier, we are a rural county. We have a lot of people living rurally and maybe on their own in some cases. And that brought a high level of reassurance that we were there on the end of the phone or the end of an email to give them the information they were looking for in uncertain times.
Yeah. So, so Danny, look, you know, you mentioned, I mean, certainly Mayo County Council, you know, an exemplary example of, you know, digitization and the digital journey. In terms of the wider public sector or local authority, would you have any advice that you would impart in embarking on, you know, taking on something like Teams? Are there any sort of key pieces that you might impart to people?
I think with projects like this and in the early stages, there's always lessons you learn and maybe pitfalls as well from the journey you undertake, particularly if you're one of the first, like we were, down the track on this. I definitely, you know, the moving to the cloud environment is not as daunting as it may seem, and local authorities by their nature are slow enough in the past to move to new technologies, and we were no different to anyone else before we moved to Office 365. And you know, paper in large organizations like ours move slowly, and we are very paper heavy, and that's part of my role to try and remove the paper and the process intensive work that's going on at the moment. But I would just say they don't, and I've given this advice to many local authorities already in our collaboration groups. I would just say, you know, don't be afraid to take the leap. There is concerns, and you can mitigate against those concerns, particularly around security and platforms and networks and stuff like that. They're all valid concerns, but you can mitigate against those, and it's not as daunting as it may first seem. You will have the cultural challenges around adopting new technologies, but there's lots of ways to break that down and meet those challenges around training and various aspects of internal culture within the organization.
So, Danny, an important question that's coming up this morning, you know, against the backdrop of COVID, and that is, you know, are Mayo for Sam?
As an avid Mayo supporter for many years and been involved in football myself, you know what? You never know. It's obviously a different climate now we're living in, and I for one am glad to see football still continuing, because it gives us something to look forward to, I guess, even though we can't be in the stands shouting on the teams and that. But you know what? It's a knockout. It's back to the way it used to be in the pre backdoor system, and it's just, you know, performance on the day. You just never know. It'll be very hard to hold us back if we do win it in terms of joining into some kind of celebrations. Let's hope we're free from lockdowns by the time we do win it, and we'll celebrate it.
Well, that's for sure. And as an avid Dub, we wish you the very best of luck, Danny.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment from a 5-in-a-row follower.
Danny, I'd like to, you know, thank you for your time this morning and for imparting that. I think it'll be very useful to other organisations, you know, in terms of embarking on their journeys.
You're very welcome, and it goes without saying, if any organisations want to reach out to us and, you know, get a grasp or a handle on what lessons we learned along the way, we're more than happy to impart that information.
Fantastic. Thanks a million. So that's almost it from ourselves this morning. I'd like to thank all of our contributors. I would also like to thank you for joining us this morning. I hope that you found it a valuable use of your time. Some key takeaways that I hope have come across this morning are around, you know, versatility, improved security, agility within your environment with a Teams deployment. Overall, I would say, please reach out to us, talk to us about your specific needs. We have a Forrester report, which we will share with anybody attending this morning's webinar, which will tell you that there's a 261% ROI on a Teams deployment. So it really is a very powerful message, but no two environments are the same. So please reach out to us. We can give you the benefit of our experience within public sector to help you and to guide you on the journey in any Teams deployment. So that's it from us, and I would just once again like to thank you for joining, and we will talk to you all soon. Thank you.